Good evening, everyone. So, this is our second Monday of April, and as usual, every second Monday of each month, we have our main talk and our meeting actually in English. So tonight was supposed to be Hendrik here, but he couldn't make it. Asked me to replace him, which I'm doing tonight. But before I start, we will have Juliana, which will be here once again to read a brief message to us and then make some comments. But before asking and inviting Juliana to come up here, we will do our initial prayer so that we can invite even further and deep down the blessings from Jesus and the blessings from our dear Creator God to our hearts, to our minds, so that we may be able to focus, at least for the hour that we are going to be here tonight, to let these teachings sink into ourselves, sink into our minds and our hearts, so that we can, understanding these teachings of love, of forgiveness, of justice, of mercifulness, that we can really understand why God is this loving Creator that wants us to be happy. So Jesus, we would like to thank you for being here with us, for having come here to us to deliver this message of grace, of love, of compassion, of forgiveness. And may your messengers that are here tonight with us help us understand this message, the message that is here to transform all of us. And may tonight's blessings be upon us all. So be it. So, let's invite Juliana. She will read from the book Our Daily Bread. I suppose it's message 98, but she will correct me if I'm wrong.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight's message is chapter 98 from Our Daily Bread by Chico Xavier and by the Spirit Emmanuel. Avoid quarrels, and the Lord's servant must not quarrel, Paul said in 2 Tim chapter 2, verse 24. Avoid those who look for quarrels as they serve the Lord. They are not in the search for divine clarity for the heart. They simply argue over praise and prominence in the arena of fleeting circumstances. And as they study in the sacred scripture, they do not draw from the resources they need for personal illumination, but rather the means that they need for personal recognition. They oppose those who do not adopt their personal ideas. They are against endeavors that do not allow them direct control. They do not cooperate except from the top down. Nor do they see the usefulness in any task that they themselves are not in charge of. They love long arguments over where to put a comma, as they waste countless days finding the apparent contradictions among writers dedicated to the ideals of Jesus. They never find time for work that entails a Christian humility, because they are not interested in their own personal recognition. They regard the conjugation of verbs to help, to forgive, and to serve as odd. They invariably fixate on humankind imperfections, and they criticize simply out of the bad habit of finding fault. They quarrel over all the particulars of evangelical identification. When the possibility for constructive agreement appears, they come up with new ways to cause trouble. Those who adhere to redeeming gospel out of a spirit of contention are the greatest and subtlest adversaries of the kingdom of God. It is crucial for discipline to be on the lookout so that they do not lose themselves in the folly of acerbic and useless words. We were not called upon to quarrel, but to serve as to learn with the master, nor were we called upon to enthrone the self, but to fulfill the supreme designs of building the divine kingdom within us. I found this passage very interesting because here Emmanuel is being very rigid and very strong on the stance of not allowing us to get into arguments with people, those who are also in the path of pursuing the path of God, but not allowing us to argue with them, because those who argue or quarrel or try to find even the slightest issues in the text of other people, like, for example, Spiritism, these people are not essentially finding the following the path of Jesus and the exact what the gospel is telling us. But those people are actually doing something that Emmanuel is here is saying that is much more dangerous to the Word of God, because these people are putting themselves in front of the true Word of God. And in the last sentence, he uses a very interesting word where he says, "Nor we are called upon to enthrone the self," meaning we cannot make ourselves bigger than the Word of God, and that's why he believes that that's a very dangerous thing to get part of. So it's more of teaching ourselves to not be this way and not to argue with others of their beliefs or their ideals, but it's also to teach ourselves that we should not get in these arguments, because these arguments is not part of the evolution of our spirit, of how we build ourselves as being the best that we can be. So I hope you like the reading. I'm now going to transfer for Mackenzie. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana, for the message. Let's avoid quarrels, right? Because it's better to work and to do than to just keep talking. So I guess I'm done for tonight. So I'm gonna stop talking, and no, we're gonna talk about something different now. Not quarreling with anybody, with anyone. We are continuing with our message from the chapter number 5 in the Gospel according to Spiritism. This is our the translation we are using from the Odyssey edition. There are different editions and different translations, which basically are the same. So it's just that if you're following anything, if you're have the same, maybe have a different translation, maybe have different words, but they're very, very close to each other. So as we've been studying chapter 5, which is Blessed are the Afflicted, we are into this, the biggest chapter of the Gospel according to Spiritism. It's the largest chapter in terms of messages, in terms of pages, in terms of the amount of stuff that we need to think about, that Kardec asks us to think about. And we've been talking a little bit about our the afflictions that we have on our day-to-day lives. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Kardec put so much into this chapter. Because although everybody wants to be happy, everybody wants to achieve a certain level of happiness, we all know that most of the time, or I wouldn't say for everybody, but depending on how the outlook we have for our own lives and for how we see our lives, we may think that we are more afflicted than happy most of the time. I wouldn't personally agree with that, but It depends really on the circumstances, and as a lot of us know, the feeling once we are happy, that happiness is apparently very quick. Time goes by very quick when we are happy. And when we are suffering, it takes a long time to end that thing. It may be a year for both, but the year that you spent suffering apparently lasts longer than the year that you spent happy. You say, oh, this year was so fast, so quick. And usually when we say that, it's because we are either with our loved one, either with doing a job that we like, doing something that's agreeable to us, that we find it to be joyful. And when we are doing something that we don't like, it takes forever. So when Kardec apparently decides to create this chapter, number 5, Blessed are the afflicted, and put so much into it, I guess it's like it's a realization that he had at the time and said, okay, so let's see how much we have to talk about afflictions. And then I guess he found lots of messages and lots of stuff about it and put it here. So we've been talking about why we suffer. We've been talking about present causes of afflictions, meaning things that we do in this life that later on will cause afflictions to us, and we forget about it, and then we blame other people for suffering something, and then we are the ones to blame. We are the ones who created that situation, and now what are we doing? Am I complaining, putting blaming to somebody else? So this is one of the aspects of that Kardec talks about. The other one, he talks about previous existences. So we may have a major issue in this life, and the more we dig, it doesn't matter how much we dig, it doesn't matter how much we research, we never find a reason for that suffering. And then that may be one of the causes is not in this life. It may be in a previous life. So these are some of the topics that Kardec is talking about in this specific chapter. But tonight, continuing on that thread, and I'm just going to read the topics from our previous, 2 topics from our previous talks here. One is past causes of afflictions, which is this one that I just mentioned. If we don't find anything that I'm suffering, the causes for everything that I'm suffering here in this life, it might be in a previous life. And the other one was that causes of present day afflictions, right? So, and then he talked about justice of afflictions, and then he started the chapter with some sayings by Jesus. So tonight, because we forget stuff, I guess that's why one of the reasons why he decided to talk about this. Because we forget stuff, I guess people started asking him, okay, so you're talking about this idea of reincarnation. You're talking about this whole thing of being born again. And you've been talking about that I could have been, could have killed someone in the past. I could have, stolen something from a person. I could have, even if I didn't want to, but ended up that I made a family poor, or I mistreated my children, or I mistreated my wife or my husband. I did something to my husband. And okay, so let's say I did this. So that I'm just thinking out loud here. What might have other people come to Kardec and started talking to him about this idea of reincarnation. And he said, yeah, that's how it is. That's what we've been receiving through the messages, talking to through these mediums with spirits, and they've been explaining, and we were able to realize that that's what happened, and we can find some resemblance of truth in all these, and that's how we perceive that is. and even goes to probably talk about, some things that we already talked about here too on chapter 4, when, Jesus was talking to Nicodemus and saying, hey, you don't understand things that I'm saying about life here. How do you want me to go and talk about previous lives with you? How do you want me to go and talk about things from heavens if you don't even understand how a man is born? That's Jesus talking to Nicodemus. So I imagine Kardec having this conversation with someone, trying to explain it to him. And I can imagine that, in these conversations, if you really are really searching for the truth, for something that really fulfills you, that really answers questions, you're not going to be trying to mock the other person, to make fun of the other person. You're going to ask questions that are true, that you really want to know the answer, that are serious questions, not just questions just to make the other person feel down. No, I want something substantial. So I can clearly see that someone would come to Kardec and ask, okay, but say, you're telling me that I was whatever. For example, I was a shoemaker that lived in whatever, in Paris. Kardec is around there. So he probably say, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You probably were a shoemaker somewhere down the past, maybe 100 years ago, whatever. So the guy would look at Kardec and say, so why don't I remember? And if you're listening, if you're hearing this question for the first time, and you didn't think about it yet, it is a very, very serious question. And it's not a question to be made fun of. It's a question for us to really think about it. And I can imagine that being this book that we are talking about, written in 1864, The Gospel According to Spiritism, and the first book of Spiritism being written 1857, so it's 7 years, more or less. I can imagine that this conversation was not when this book was published. I imagine that he must have had that conversation a few years before that. And he had a lot of time to think about this. And I guess that this item here, number 11, is a real and very thoughtful answer to that question. It's the answer of why one forgets his past life or his past lives. Why do we forget? Let me start by saying, in all this introduction is just for us to, or at least my exercise in trying to get into Kardec's mind. And I've been trying to do this more and more with time, because I think that his mind works in a certain way that it helps us look at things in a different way, look at things in a way for us to really go the path of trying to find truth and not just trying to satisfy what I want, but to really look and search for the truth, instead of agreeing or disagreeing with someone. No, I don't want to agree with or disagree with someone. I want to find the truth. If that person that I like or that I don't like has a piece of the truth, I want to know that piece of the truth, independently of the person. So, having said that, I have to stop here, and instead of going straight down the path of talking about the text here, I want to ask you, how many times did we cry this year? So, and maybe we are able to answer, because, being adult men and women, we may remember, because it might have been something that's serious, right? Try to remember how many times we cried when we were a kid. When we were kids, it's kind of hard because, we cry for no reason, right? Or no reason to adults. To a kid, if they're crying, it's for a good reason. So maybe you cried twice, 3 times. What about last year? What about 3 years ago? We were still adults. We would know how that if we were crying back then, 3 years ago, it would have been for a good cause, for something that was really hurting. But do we remember how many times we cried 3 years ago? I don't think we do. For us to remember something like that, we would have to be taking notes all the time. Right? We would have to be taking notes. We would have to be writing them in a diary or something, or have a very, very special memory. Another question. Do we know who we were when we were 15 years old? I mean, we can remember, and we will remember some stuff. I'm pretty sure that we will, especially if we are around people that lived at the same time, then we will start feeding off each other. We will tell a story, then will bring us a memory, then I tell another story, the other person remembers something that brings another something, and then we keep feeding each other with those memories. But out of the blue, if I ask you to write something that happened and to write at least 10 things that were really big things, or when we were 15, and ask the question, who are you at 15? We will remember some stuff, but we will not know. We will tell, I was Nancy, I was Mackenzie, I was Josie, I was Cres, whoever, I was Juliana. I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell myself this, but is that the same person? Is that exactly the same person? What changed from then to now? If a person that used to see me at 15 sees me now without seeing everything that happened in between, and look at me without interacting with me, just looks at me and see me doing stuff, will that person recognize my way and say, this is not that same person? I can see some things that are similar, but something is different too. And I hope that by growing up as spiritist or be putting an effort to become better, a better Christian for that matter, is going to be something that person will say, that person got much better. I hope. I'm scratching my head. Hope nobody is watching. We forget things. And that's one of the things that I want to make very clear here, and I'm talking about my experience of forgetting things. I know that there are people who forget, who remember much more than I do. And I know that there are people that remember much less than I do. But we all forget things. We all forget things. And we forget some things that we said that were very important at some points. Some big decisions that we took, that we made, and we don't follow up because we forgot that we took that decision. And so to forget something is not something out of the ordinary. That's the first thing. It's not something that's out of the ordinary. It's something that happens every single day of our lives. If we remembered everything, I don't know what size of a head we would have. Because, we have so many things in our minds already that we have to remember, we have to do, that if we remembered everything that happened to us consciously, it would make our life so miserable. Right? Before we started here, I was talking to Cristiane, and she was almost crying here because so many things in her head. She had to transfer this money from one account to another account, and she did it. She did it, but she did it to the wrong account. So it's so many things in her mind. It's so many things that we have to have in our minds that sometimes it just crushes us. So Kardec starts this text by saying, "It is useless to object that forgetfulness constitutes a barrier to the utilization of experience acquired in past lives." So he starts by saying, look, if you're trying to come to me and tell me that to forget who you were in a previous life is a barrier for you to be a better person, this couldn't be more away from what the truth really is. If we remember everything, and I'm not talking about other lives, I'm not talking about previous lives, I'm talking about this life. When we say that to forgive and to forget are close together, but are not the same, we say that they're close together because when we forget something that someone did to us, we can look at that person with a fresh set of eyes, as if nothing had happened. And I'm going to treat the person the same way I treated before. If I forget something that Juliana did bad to me, or that Chris did bad to me, or if she would remember, she would forget that one day I said that thing to her, and then she said, "I'm not going to marry you in your next life," she would still be saying, "I'm going to marry you in your next life." But she can't forget it. She has it in her mind. If Josie had not forgotten that she was an Italian woman in the previous life, she would still be speaking Italian, not English. Right, Josie? Once we forget something, it is as if we are emptying a space in our mind for us to fill it in with something else. Learning new things. That's why we sleep, for example. That's why we go to bed and have dreams. It is as if our body is saying, "Hey, look, there is way too much information going into your mind. You cannot process everything at once. You have to take a break. And if you don't take a break, you will go crazy." And as crazy as that sounds, by saying that we'll go crazy if you don't take a break, just try to see a person that didn't sleep for 2 days, 3 days. The person doesn't work anymore. Everything starts to become a blur in their lives. Everything is like a dream. Everything is so weird because the body cannot take it. It needs to rest, and the mind needs to rest. Our brain needs to almost shut down and transfer all that information somewhere, go somewhere, so that I can have space to really process everything else. So Kardec starts by saying, look, it's not about remembering. That's not what it is. Being alive, it's not about remembering. Remembering it vividly, because, and then he will say it later on, we think that we forget. And what do I want to say when I say that? Because I'm saying that we forget things. What I'm saying is we don't have the remembrance of that fact, of that person, of that thing clear. as if we are watching a video, as if we are seeing a picture. No, but there's something that sticks to us. There's something that is inside of ourselves. Because I bet we cannot remember a lot of the stuff that we studied when we were on 5th grade, on 6th grade, on 7th grade. I bet we don't remember everything that was studied there. But it's because we studied. It's because we went to school. It's because of all those times that we were there repeating, doing exercises, trying to remember what the teacher said, trying to understand what the book was about. That knowledge is, to some degree, inside of ourselves. So we have it within ourselves. It's just not on the surface, but it's within ourselves. So we don't remember the complete fact, but we have the feeling of who we are, of who we were, and what do I need to do, or what do I want to do with that knowledge. So forgetting the past is, and here I have to make another stop, because to remember and to remind everyone that when we are studying this book, especially when we are studying the Gospel according to Spiritism, let me rephrase that. When we are reading the Gospel according to Spiritism, and we are not yet used to or accustomed to the sequence of the book, of what the book brings to us from beginning to end, we may open the book like this and then read a message. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So, for example, I just open in this message that says, without charity, there is no salvation. It's a great message. You can go, you can read it. But let me be clear here. Especially in this book, but in the other books from the beginning of Spiritism, they are made for us to read like that if we want to, but they are study books. They are books that, for us to really grasp what's on chapter 15, we need to learn what came in chapter 14, what came in chapter 13, what came in chapter 12, what came in chapter 1. Because it's like a sequence. It's one of those types of studies that is very hard for us to really understand completely what is multiplication without knowing what is to add two numbers together. Because multiplication is nothing more than adding numbers together. Just an expansion of it. A faster way of adding numbers in a certain degree. When we are talking about forgetfulness of the past, if we are talking to a person that first doesn't believe in spirits, to a person that doesn't believe or want to really understand that there is a God that controls the universe, that created the universe, it's kind of hard to grasp this concept if we don't have the previous concept. So this is one of the things that we have to understand. Just like when a kid comes to us and asks us for something. Oh, Dad, can you do this? Or, Dad, can I do this? And we say, no, you can't. And then the kid will start trying every single thing for us to make what they want. And if it's something that I really know that's going to be bad for him or her, I will keep my position. I'll say, no, you will not do it. How can I make that mind understand my reasoning? I can only say, look, I will not do it, it's not because I don't like you. It's because I like you that I'm doing it. And it's not right for it to be done now. You will understand later, but only later you will understand. If you want, I can try to explain it to you. It will not make sense to you. Why? Because I still don't have that full capacity of understanding of everything that goes on into an adult's mind. So when Kardec talks here in this passage, he takes, of course, into consideration the previous chapter, who already talked about reincarnation. He takes into consideration that we all believe in God. He takes into consideration that we have this feeling or this sensation that we need to progress. He already talked about the alliance of science and religion in the previous chapters. So Kardec is preparing us to really look at this and say, look, you have to have all these ideas before. You have to have this mass of understanding for you to look at this forgetfulness of the past and say, look, if there was a better way, God would have made it differently. And if it is like this, we have to try to understand why it is like this. And not to try to question God why he didn't do it correctly, quote unquote. Just like Juliana was saying here. Why would we be quarreling against God by questioning the laws that were created? Why would we question gravity, for example? We don't question gravity. We understand it, try to understand it, try to work around, and try to use that law in our favor. It is because we have gravity that we can fly a plane. It is because we have gravity that we can fly. I said that I can fly planes, not because of gravity. It's because of the air and of the aerodynamics. But because we have gravity, we can send and use the gravity of the sun and of the earth to make a rocket fly around the earth and use the gravity of the earth and of the sun to, just like a slingshot, and get more speed because of gravity. We understood how gravity works, and now we use it in our advantage. We don't question why. Maybe we questioned in the past. I'm saying that we don't question gravity, but I know that we do. Because some people say, when they fall and break themselves apart and said, oh, why did God create gravity? But when it's to our advantage, then we want to use it. So here's the same thing. If there is a law that when we are born, most of us forget our past, there must be a reason for it. And we just need to understand why. If we want to have that thing work for us, make it work for us. But don't keep questioning and fighting around it. And understand that you may want to break the law. Can you imagine how many people tried to create, and we've seen videos like that, tried to create the first planes, and they were just crashed because they jumped from high altitudes and hoping that those things would work for them and would not let them fall and break themselves, and then they just fell and were crushed because they fell. But they were the pioneers. They were trying to make that law work for them and making that thing to fly, and we were able to do it. The Wright brothers here, Alberto Santos Dumont in Brazil and in Paris created the plane. And we are flying today, even out of the galaxy, or not of the galaxy still, but out of our planetary system, out of the solar system, and Saturn, Jupiter, and go on, and the spaceships are flying, using what we learned, when we're talking about these moral laws, or I mean, the laws that govern ourselves as human beings, as intelligent beings, or as these beings of the creation, we have to ask, why are there limitations? Why are they important? So this is all basically in this first paragraph. And we have 6 more to go. We have till midnight to go here. But I'm not gonna make you listen to all that until midnight. So this is something that really makes me passionate, let's say, or loving about this topic, is because we need to, at one point, not to be satisfied, because it's not, the word's not satisfaction. Satisfied with the teaching and then that's it, it's over. No, it's not, no. But it's to get to a point where we understand that there's a law. Period. And when we get to that point that there's a law, then we formulate, like, what is gravity? Gravity is this. What is the inertia principle? Is that one object that is either in movement or stopped? If no other force acts upon that object will stay and remain in that position, be it in movement or stopped forever. So when we get a ball and we throw the ball on the ground, if there was no force on that ball anymore, the ball would be rolling forever. Why does the ball stop rolling? Because there's a force that makes the ball stop. What force? The contact force between the surface of the ball and of whatever the ball is rolling on. So that's why if you roll a ball in a surface of ice, it will roll for much longer than if you roll a ball on the surface of grass, for example. Because there is more force in the grass against the movement than... So we understand this. There's a law. And are we questioning this all the time? No, because we see it happening all the time. So when we look at people and we talk about forgetting the past, and we ask, do you remember your past life? No. So, but why don't we remember? And then it's all about, why did God do this? But it's what it is. And if we want, like I said in the beginning, if I want to ask this question to really understand why, and not just to question God, but to really understand why and why it affects my life, then I might find the truth, or I might find the reason, or a good reason. And that's what Kardec says here. He says, look, if you, for example, remember exactly everything who you were in a previous life, and because when we are born again, we are usually born with the same people or around the same group of people. And if we are being born with the same group of people, we might have some issues with them. And the question is, if you remember what that person did to you, what would happen? Now, what if you remember what you did to him? What would happen? How would we be able to create new relationships to fix what was broken? To fix what I left incomplete in the past? It's as if we would not have had the time to sleep, and we are still awake. And with the time passing, 1 more hour, 2 more hours, 3 more hours, we are getting so tired and so tired and so tired that we cannot process anything anymore. So it is as if God is saying, look, you already lived a long life. I know that it might have been hard. I know that it might have been very difficult for you to live with this person, with that person. So let's rest for a little while. Let's rest your mind. Let's empty your mind. Let's have a chance to start it over. And so when you meet that same group of people, although you will have something inside of you that says, hey, there's something wrong here, but I don't have anything else to run upon and say, you did this to me, you did this to me, you did this to me, or I did this to you. We don't remember to point it out. So if we really want to change something, we will have the ability of changing something. But as with anything in life, we don't want explanations. We really don't want explanations. We don't want answers. We don't want real answers. We want answers that satisfy me. Or we want to ask questions, but we don't want to hear the answers. So it is very common for us to come and ask a friend an opinion. Or I wouldn't say a friend, but ask people their opinion on certain subjects. And when the person gives their opinion that it doesn't match ours, we either don't ask that person anymore, because why am I going to ask an opinion of something that the person doesn't agree with me anymore? I don't want to hear an answer. I want to hear something that I already know. Or that I already think. So, what do you think about that person? And then I say something, and then I say, oh, that's a good person, never did anything bad to me, or the other way around. Oh, that's a terrible person. And then the person that's asking me is actually thinking the opposite. So, do we want a true answer, or do we want an answer that agree with me? When we think about forgetting the past, forgetting who we were, what we did, or what we didn't do for us to still be here, one thing that we need to have in mind is, if we are here, is because we still need to be here. It's not because we chose to be here, at least not in our level. Maybe a Chico Xavier, maybe he chose to be here. Maybe maybe a Gandhi, he chose to be here. Maybe a Buddha, he chose to be here. Maybe they didn't need to be here anymore. Maybe they didn't even need to be reborn again. Maybe, who knows? Just throwing out names there. Maybe Joseph, that lives close by here I'm going to be born again on earth just because I want to. I didn't need to be here, but I want to. But in our level, and I'm talking about myself, if I am here, if I'm still here on earth, it's because I still have to be here. And if I still have to be here, that tells a lot about me. That tells me that I still need to progress a lot, to make a lot of progress in many, many fields, in my mind, in my heart, in my actions, in everything that I do. Do I need to remember who I was? Or by what I feel when I see certain people, by what I feel when I see certain actions, by what I feel when I have the impulse to do something, doesn't that impulse tell me who I am? Doesn't that impulse tell me who I was? Not the person. Because it doesn't matter the name that I had in the previous life. It doesn't matter where I was born. It doesn't matter if I was born in Brazil, if I was born here, if I was born in Europe. It doesn't matter. What matters is, what did I do with that opportunity? So remembering the past, by remembering everything that happened, it can happen. Some people will remember. Some of us even remember when we are sleeping. Maybe have glimpses of who we are. Maybe we see a person and we recognize that person, and when we say, "Oh, I saw you on my dream, but you didn't have this face." I don't know if that happened to you, but it happened to me already. I mean, seeing a person, I see the person, I know that that person is someone, but I look at that face and I see, but that's not the face that I remember. So it is as if I put that person into another body, and maybe I'm remembering that person from a previous life. Maybe. Not saying that it is all the times, but maybe we remember. Maybe we remember ourselves. Maybe we look at ourselves in a different way when we are dreaming. Maybe when we are, sneezing, it's memory of, a past spring from a different life. I don't know. So, why do we need to remember? We don't need to. We may remember, we may not. But if we don't remember, there must be a reason for it. And the most logical reason that we can think of in terms of Spiritism and in terms of this progress going forward is that although it can be helpful sometimes, remembering certain things, the way we are today, with our feelings that we don't control yet, that we don't know how to deal with things. If I remember, if someone did something bad to me, but it was not a terrible thing, it was something minor, we can carry a grudge for the entire life. We stop talking to a person because the person stole my girlfriend. Or we think the person stole my girlfriend because we don't even know the whole story. And then we hold a grudge for the entire life. We don't talk to that person. We say bad things about that person for a small thing. Imagine if we were to remember that we did something really, really bad in a previous life, or that person did something really, really bad to us in a previous life. How can we work this out if we don't even know how to work out things that are very small in our present life? So we want to know everything. We want to have this idea of knowing everything as if we are a computer, that we have no feelings, but we forget that we are no computers, that we have feelings, and those feelings are sometimes so overwhelming that our mind doesn't work anymore. It's only feeling. And we have to have this balance between feeling and the mind. We have to have this balance, but we still don't know how to control, how to be in charge of our feelings. So when we forget the past, is a very, very, very good indication that God was correct. But we just need to pay attention to our current life and try to pay attention, how many grudges do we hold from when I was 15 and that person on that day wrote something on the board that bullied me, or wrote something and told a lie about me, and I still hold the grudge against that person. When I was 10 years old, someone said something to me. My dad did this to me, or my mom did this to me, and I still hold that grudge for my entire life. What if I discover something from a previous life, from that same person that I'm holding a grudge right now? But I was born here without remembering, so that I could probably, without having that prejudgment, being able to work it out, to have the space, the room to work with the other person, to grow together, to have a different feeling for that person, to change, to transform that feeling. But that's not what the answer that we want. And hopefully that guy that I was imagining Kardec talking to in the beginning, hopefully that guy, be it us, be it someone else, that was asking him about the forgetful of the past, was really in search of the truth, was really in search for something that didn't need to match his views, that needed, what it needed was to make sense and make, maybe open a little bit of a slit so that some light can get in, and maybe we can see that if we forget the past, as much as we forget from a previous life, is not something bad. It's something that needs to be there as a protective method, not from the others, but from ourselves. We need to protect ourselves. We need to learn that some of these things, some of these laws that were created, that are in place, were made for us to be able to grow, to be able to have room to grow, to be able to have space to be better, to behave better, to transform into a different into a different person. So that man, that woman that was talking to Kardec 160 years ago, 150 years ago, talking to him about the forgetful of the past, that made him write this text here, made him create this idea behind the justice of God's law in this particularity of let him have another chance. Let them be able to start from scratch and rewrite their lives without having to worry about so many things that are already pulling them down. Let's get rid of all those things. Let's leave them traces so that they can feel that they have something to do. And we have all these intuitions when we get near certain people, when we get near certain things. There's something that lights up in us and say, hey, this is attracting me. Why is this attracting me? This is pulling me over. Why is this pulling me this way? Why is this pushing me that way? That is not remembering who we were in terms of, was I a king? Was I a person that worked on the streets? Was I a lawyer? Was I somebody that didn't work? Was I who? It doesn't make me remember that. But independently, if I was a king and if I was a bad person being a king, I will know it right now. Or if I was a poor person and I was a very bad person, I would know it right now too. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who I was in terms of a personality, in terms of where I was born. What matters is what is moving me, what is attracting me. And with those indications, we should be able to open our eyes and say, hey, look, if this is attracting me, I need to work it out. Or if this other side is attracting me, oh, that's good. Let me go more in this way, because this is going to be good for me, good for a lot of people. So I can listen to me. I can listen to my attractions. I can listen to what am I attracted to. That is a very, very good indication of who I was. So if I go into a lot of trouble putting together the entire chapter of the afflictions, we can have a very, very good overview of why we suffer or why we are happy while here on earth. So I hope that all this talk about forgetting things make you remember something about this in the future, so that we in our own lives can understand, look at our lives, look at things that we are living and say, look, I didn't do anything to be going through this. Why am I going through this? There may be something inside of me that is attracting that. Or maybe I forgot that I treated my mom bad, or maybe I forgot that I didn't do something that I should be doing, and then now as a consequence, this is happening because I didn't act before. So now as a consequence. So this entire chapter helps us take our lives into consideration more, take our lives in our own hands, and notice that there are some things that I can control, some things that I cannot control. And if I can control, let's do something about it. If I cannot control, let's pray to God that He can help us by sending our friends, our spiritual friends, physical friends, to be together, walking towards a better life, walking towards a better future. Hopefully, we will remember. And if you don't remember, chapter number 5, item number 11 of the Gospel According to Spiritism. So go back, read, and you will be able to understand more. Kardec writes this as beautiful, much, much more beautiful than I was able to express here tonight. So with this, we finish our talk for the night. Before going to the passes, which is our non-mandatory exchange of energies, I would like just to say a few announcements, 2, 3, 4 things. I'm forgetting. A few things. So first of all, I'd like to invite everyone to remember doing their gospel at home, or God at home, as some people prefer to do it, which is having at least once a week during a certain period of time, at the same time of the week, day of the week and time of the day, sitting down, relaxing for a little bit, do a prayer, open the Gospel According to Spiritism, or a book with good messages, and read those messages and try to reflect upon those, invite the good spirits, invite Jesus to our home, so that we can have this environment around our house, our neighbors, to have a little spot of light there, so that the good spirits can come, gather around, and have a better place around our own home. That would be once a week for about 20-30 minutes. That's a good start. I would also like to remind everyone about this book here. It's only in Portuguese, but it's called Vencendo a Dor da Morte, meaning Overcoming the Pain of Death, written by this woman called Célia Diniz. She is, there's a movie in Brazil that was made, and she was one of the participants of the movie. Her story was told partially there in the movie, which is called The Mothers of Chico Xavier, As Mães de Chico Xavier. She lost one of her sons. I don't know if it was a son or a daughter. I don't remember. Yeah, okay, so that's even worse. And she wrote this book, Overcoming the Pain of Death, talking about how to overcome the situation of losing their daughters and sons. And this, she will be here in Massachusetts in May. I think it's on the 19th, right? So she's going to be here on the 19th. That will be a Saturday. She will come to here. She'll come here, and she will go to other spiritist centers around. We have a few of these books there for on sale. She sent the books before coming, and she will be here with us talking about this topic, and it's going to be a great night. Um, on the 22nd of April, in 2 weeks, there will be a Sunday afternoon. We will have our second sarau, eighth, I think, sarau, which is an afternoon of art, poetry, music here in the center, free. We will have some refreshments served, inviting people to come to play. There will be a play from the kids. There will be music playing. Juliana will play the violin, then she will play the guitar. She will play a lot of instruments here. Christiane will give us a talk about the art that she likes.
And on Saturday before, we're going to have Aloysio.
Oh yeah, on the 21st we'll have Aloysio Silva here at night. He comes from Espírito Santo in Brazil, and then on Sunday we will have this our sarau. And guess that's it, right, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so these were our announcements for tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. If you are on the internet, I don't know if there's anybody watching. And now we're going back to our passes, and next week we will be back with our meeting in Portuguese here at the same time, 7 p.m. And right after the passes, we'll come back to do our final prayer. How much is the book? That's a good question. I don't know. I have to check outside.